privilege to come across somebody who in her whole being acts as a role model for the way forward. Jazz Ampaw Farr has come further than most. I had a mentor once who used to talk about the backpacks we carry, and Jazz's backpack was a big one and a laden one to start with. She has come so far and she's made it her life mission to bring other people with her. We're really excited to talk with her today. She's a resilience ninja, a thought leader, a change agent. She's founded charities. She works with people all over the world. Adriano, I can't wait. Let's go.
So thanks to be with you. And of course, on a very special curated series here for RELEARN called Second Serve. Phil, how is life treating you there in the harbour city and the second best city in Australia, Sydney?
Oh, look, just having a peachy time. Thanks very much, Adriano. Sipping on a cheeky little glass of Vouvray at the moment and looking forward to the conversation with Jazz. How's it going in Melbourne? I hear you're about to go out for dinner this week.
Well, yes, we don't need any of your condescending tone there, Phil. We do go and dine out here in Melbourne now that we've been released from lockdown. I'm sure our listeners in London are not liking that whatsoever. But today was a glorious 28 degrees. And of course, this is being recorded on the day of the Melbourne Cup. So one of the great sporting events of the globe. Unfortunately, not a single soul was allowed to go to the Melbourne Cup. Normally has around 200,000 people. But anyway, enough of our silly banter. Let's get to our wonderful guest. And Jazz, I'm going to ask you a question that we pretty much ask all of our guests on Game Changers. And that is, tell us a little bit about your personal story. How have you gotten to where you are today?
Wow. Well, I hate to say I was born a poor black child, but it is true. I kind of lived in abject poverty when I was younger. My mum, my biological mum, has like 5 different relationships with guys. So there's 6 of us and we've all got, well, we're not sure whose dad is who, but we've all got different dads. I'm the only brown one. That's what we know. So I lived with my grandma to start with, and there were lots of arguments, lots of rows. But like, I always think, what age were you when you realized that adults weren't to be trusted? I was 6. I knew at 6 the adults couldn't take care of me. And that was really scary because it kind of formed my worldview of what I need to do in order to survive. So when I was 7, my mum married my stepdad, who's like a violent drunk. He went on to physically, emotionally abuse us. I was sexually abused as well by him and by his friends. It was a living hell. It was living hell. And I believed that I was less than human, that I'd be dead. He promised me he would kill me. So I believed that I wasn't human. I exist in order to, I was a thing for someone else. That was the rule. And I took pleasure from trying to take care of my brothers and sister. That was my big role. If I could protect them, then I was doing something useful. So my whole worldview is filmed around, I've got no value, I'm not worth anything, I'm dirty, cheap, guilty, horrible, worthless. And my only role is to be there as a parent for my younger siblings. So school was a bit of a misnomer. There was this massive disconnect between real life and the 9-carat plastic Enid Blyton life presented to me at school, which I couldn't get my head around or access. So it was incredible because I had people interrupting that trajectory and transforming the way I saw things in school. I was like a golden baton being passed along. I had a teacher at every stage in my educational career. In fact, there's 2 years where I didn't, and you can see the impact of that on my life, which just kept pulling me back from the brink. And somehow, I want to say it was education, but it wasn't. It was people. Education isn't magic. The people in education are magic. Somehow I made it through. I mean, I know it's a great story of celebration, but I know how many times I gave up as well. But I made it through, and because the people in my life that had impacted on me the most were teachers, I went on to become a teacher. So growing up was, it was hard and it was scary, and I didn't want to be alive lots of times. And because of the teachers in my life, I call them my everyday heroes. That's what you are, everyday heroes. And because of those everyday heroes, and there were 5, and there was a cast of accidental saviors like dinner ladies, midday supervisors, caretakers who would bring me into their worlds. I am who I am today. I mean, everything I have and everything I am, I owe to people who knew why they were in the room. So I feel compelled now to bring people into that story. I'm dissatisfied by how much teachers feel put upon and feel like they're not amazing when they are. And I feel compelled to kind of draw that everyday hero-ness out of people.
First of all, I want to say, gee, thank you very much for having a willingness to be so vulnerable at the top of our show and sharing so much of your very personal story. I've got two quick questions in relation to what you just shared. Adults failed you at a very young age. What was it in the teacher adults, these everyday heroes that you spoke about, that you trusted and was comfortable in their presence and in what they were sharing with you and supporting you with? What was it that they had that allowed you to trust adults again?
Do you know what? It's a great question. And I don't want to appear that I'm glossing over this, because what you're seeing is someone who has done the work for 40 years. Like, I'm 50 in a minute, in a few days. So I'm not, I haven't got
it's a good age though, isn't it, Jazz? It's really good. It's a great age.
I've been lying about my age for years. I started lying about my age when I was 26, telling everyone I was 30 because you got better presents. So I've been lying about my age, lying. And then when I got to 30, I started saying I was 40. She got so many compliments. And now I'm 50, I'm kind of like, oh, what do I do now? So I'm sort of stuck. But what's interesting is that, so this is a journey. I've done the work. Obviously, I've had therapy. I haven't been sat on the sofa with fingers crossed, hoping everything turns out okay. I have done the work, but this is what it looks like on the other side of feeling that you're not worth it. So I want to be really clear, because I know people will be listening. I know the statistics. I know people will be listening who have been through this sort of journey. Our stories might be different, but the feeling at the end of it is the same. You're not worth anything. You're not good enough. And I want to be really clear about what's available if you push through. And it might surprise you, but the things the teachers did were not huge things. They were incredibly small things, but they were things that I didn't have anywhere else. So Mrs. Cook had the kindest eyes. She was my first everyday hero when I was 6. And she would look at, you could tell, like, I thought I was her favorite child. I found out afterwards, so did everyone else. But the way she looked at you, she was always smiling. She had this twinkle in her eye. She was kindfluence. That's what changed it for me in the first instance. She would delight in things I did, spending time with me. She had massive expectations. She would say, who are you going to be? Not what are you going to do? Who are you going to be? And I remember when she got to me, I was just in awe of her. And I said, I want to be just like you. It just came out, it's just really embarrassing. And she didn't flinch. She went, you mean you want to be a teacher? And I remember thinking, oh, no, because she used to wear brown all the time. And I remember thinking, I have not got enough brown clothes to pull this off. What have I said? And I'm like, oh, backtrack. But she was looking at me. She was looking into me. And I'm like, yeah. And she went, you should do that because you would make an excellent educator. And it was like she tied this gold rope around my waist and hammered the other end into a stake in the ground. And the next 20 years was me being pulled towards this impossible vision of a woman who believed in me before I could believe in myself. Mr. Simpson used to stand on the gate and smile at me in the morning. He used to say, hello, at secondary school. And I'd be like, what are you, some sort of pervert? Because I had the attitude by then. Didn't matter. Yeah. The next day, he'd be there again. All right. And when someone does that to you every day for 5 years, the ice around your heart melts. I mean, it just does. Sure. What Mr. Williams used to shake our hands when we came into the classroom. He was Welsh, and he always wore a suit, and his collars were too big. He had sweat patches under his arms, and he'd stand at the door, and it was like a really rough school. And he'd stand at the door and go, "Good morning, sir." And we're like, "What?" But every single day, it would like it's what you're doing. You're asserting, I see you. You have value, because I think I've got Jaslow's hierarchy of needs. Children need to be safe, obviously. They need to be well, obviously, and then they need to be seen, and then education can start. Because you're right about, like, it's like they bought my loyalty through kindness. Some teachers didn't. Some teachers expected me to behave, and then I could believe in the education system, then I could belong. My hero is put belonging first. You belong. And because of that, what I believed about myself changed, and then my behavior started to change. So it's the tiniest things, kindness. I mean, it's not rocket science. acknowledgement, kindness, the smile. The only people that smiled at me, the only adults that smiled at me were in school. People didn't smile at me outside of school. So that is worth so much. And it's hard to understand if you're not I was a chaos navigator. I navigated chaos every day. My kids are order navigators. They're like namby-pamby, middle-class, cuss eating kids. I've done that. But I want them to understand that that's not the world for everyone. And school is designed largely for order navigators. It's not designed for chaos navigators. That's people that make school accessible for chaos navigators.
It's really interesting listening to you with that response in relation to these kind of everyday heroes, these teachers who clearly understand the value of the character apprenticeship between the teacher and the student. And they clearly understand the profoundness of the social exchange that happens when someone is made to feel that they're known, that they're loved, and that they're valued. And that's obviously something that you've picked up on really quickly. When was that point, though? You mentioned before about wanting to be a carer for your younger siblings, but was there another point in your life where you made the conscious decision that you're going to help other people heal themselves from the residual of their past? When was that decision?
You're good. This is good. Yes, there was a point. For the first, so after I was sort of living with my brothers and sisters, there was a point where we had sex ed in school, and I realized that what my stepdad was doing to me is how you got pregnant. I was 11 at the time. So I melted down. I mean, I ran. I just left school. I left home. I lived on the streets. I was picked up by a pimp. I'm paraphrasing here, but I lived with a pimp for a while. And there was a point where he'd taken me shopping, and I was in a changing room, and I was holding up this outfit. And I just started, I like melting down. You know, when you try and tune a TV or a radio in and it's just noise. I just had this moment of I didn't know the word child sexual exploitation, but I knew it wasn't safe. So I was like melting down. And then one clear thought came to mind. And that was Mrs. Cook would not wear this outfit. You know, it wasn't brown with long sleeves. So it's not something she would wear. I hadn't seen Mrs. Cook for 7 years at that time. And that's what's amazing about leadership. It's not what you do, it's what happens when you're not in the room that makes you a leader. But it was enough. I dropped everything. I ran. I was brave. You know, she told me I was brave. I dropped the dress. I ran out of the shop. I handed myself into a police station over the road. Like I went in and slammed my hands on the counter and said, I demand the right to remain silent. Because I thought that's what you did. So, and I got put in foster care and I ran away and blah, 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 on and on and on and on. And then it kind of got to a point where I finally, I mean, I failed lots of times, but I finished education. I had a degree. I could become a teacher. And what I learned at Teacher Training College, being the only brown person there, the only working class person there, the only, you know, this whole kind of history that I had was so alien to everyone else. What I learned is to shut up, put up, shut up, and keep your head down. Because what I saw is the leaders were kind of white and male and middle class, and I was none of those. So if I wanted to make it, I've got to blend in, like with this hair and this arse. Somehow I've got to find a way of blending in. So I totally tried to morph I turned the volume down on myself. And I lived like that through education, through teaching. As a teacher, I would see things that I'm like, that's no, but I wouldn't say anything because it would out myself. Like I kept quiet when I knew I should have spoke because I was scared. I was terrified. So I gave into fear. I let fear drive my bus. And there was a point. So I've got this addiction to reality TV shows. I don't watch them, but I appear on them. So I went on a show called Blind Date when I was 20. It's like a dating show. And I won. I picked this guy, but it was an awful date. It was the worst date ever. It kept appearing on the best of Blind Date as the worst date for years afterwards. So that was like when I was 20. Then when I was 40, I went on The Apprentice with Alan Sugar. So I do it every 20 years. I'm actually going to go on Love Island when I'm 60 because I reckon I've got a good chance. I've got 10 years to convince my husband that's a good idea. But so I went on The Apprentice and I was fired in the first week on The Apprentice. It was hideous. It's a story for another time, but it was so funny. And it's the gift that keeps on giving because it's now, you know, you Google me, that's what comes up. But when I was on The Apprentice, I sort of came off and it's huge in the UK. It's huge. And no one's allowed to know you're going on. And the night before The Apprentice aired, my phone is blowing up. People are calling me. But my sister-in-law called me and I sort of answered. I hadn't spoken to my brothers and sisters since I left because in my eyes, I abandoned them. I left them to what I knew was an abusive set of parents. So I felt incredible guilt and shame because of that and selfishness. And I was sort of punishing myself in a way. And so she phoned me and said that my younger brother had died. He'd taken a heroin overdose and died. And it just kind of hit me. I mean, there was obviously the grief and the shock and all of the pain and all of that, but there was a point where I realized, what's the point in me winning if I know stuff that can help other people and I'm not saying it? What is the point of me? Like, little jazzers are in the situation they're in, and I'm not saying anything to the teachers I'm with every day, because I was like a education consultant at the time. I'm not talking about it because I'm scared for myself. Well, I'm in a position where I'm safe. I've got a fridge full of food. I've got a house. I've got a home. I've got family. At what point do I see this for what it is? Fear driving your decisions. And then that's a legacy, isn't it? That's a legacy. Yes, I haven't gone on to be an abuser. I haven't had a terrible life now. I don't have a terrible life now, but I'm still living under that cosh of you're not good enough. And it's just like, no, I couldn't save my brother. I couldn't say anything. He had the same experience as me, but he didn't have 5 teachers who believed in him in the way I did. I'm not saying you don't, I'm just saying that's the impact that these educators have by being human first and teacher second. And so at that point, it's like, so what do I do? So I went to my next talk. I'm doing a big talk. There's like 300 people there. And I think, I wonder what it would be like if I just told the truth. So I changed my slides and I just gave a little bit of my story. And it just, for the second time in my life, I trended on Twitter, but this time not because I was fired from The Apprentice, because of something good. And it just really resonated with people. It helped people reconnect with their why. And from then I'm like, well, that's where the TED Talk came from, and the book deal and the international speaking career. And at that point, it's like, everyone wants authenticity, but nobody wants vulnerability. They all want, and authenticity without vulnerability is useless. The vulnerability is what makes it so powerful. So I feel like this is how I pay forward what people did for me. This is how I start the unending journey of trying to acknowledge those everyday heroes and what they did for me in my life, by encouraging other people to stand on their own agency and remember why they're in the room and reconnect with the why of being an educator.
Jazz,
it feels like an impossible journey when I describe it.
It's not. There's nothing impossible about it. It is improbable though, what you're describing. Yeah. And I want to take you just for a moment, if I can pull you to a side turn on the sorts of things that you're talking about there, and let's talk about helping teachers and helping schools and school leaders to recognize the way in which they have the capacity to let kids know that they are good enough. So in schools, when we talk to educators all over the world, they will tell us about systems that keep people apart rather than pull them together. They will tell us about systems that don't measure the things that really matter. We'll talk to experiences a little bit like yours, where you were lucky you had 5 teachers, but you had a brother who didn't, and siblings who didn't. And yet it should be the norm around that rather than the exception. So what it tells us is that really good education for character and competency and wellness is still too much an accidental thing. So if it starts with belonging, and it goes on to the achievement of potential, and then it's about the doing of good and right in the world, and we need to help educators to recognize that we need to be deliberate, targeted, intentional about what we do, that we need to shape culture in a way that requires us to recognize that it might be us who can make the difference. How can we help educators and leaders and system administrators to recognize that they can make that difference? They can equip, empower, and enable others.
Yeah, and here's the truth about this. It's not easy. It's very simple, but it's not easy. That's the truth about this. And both of you have hit on words that I fall on quite a lot, being kind of intentional versus being accidental or on automatic. The thing is, when you're kind of under pressure to perform, and let's not forget, if your money is tied into exam results and you've got 3 kids and a mortgage yourself, and you're faced with a child who has messed about for 5 years and probably isn't going to do very well, and a child who probably is, and you have to choose which child you put time and energy into, this is a form of torture as far as I'm concerned. For someone who is a feeler, for someone who actually connects with humans, that's a hideous position to be in. And here's the reality. There are things you can control and there are things you can't control. And you can spend your time agonizing over the things that you can't control, that you have no control over, or you can spend your time pouring your energy and your focus into the things you have control over. And really, all we have control over is how we show up. That's it, really. That's the only thing. When you think about all the other, we can't influence what people think about us. We can't influence very much. We can control how we show up. Now, at some point, there has to be a decision that people make. And I think I kind of have these stages when I look at my own life, where the first stage is like, you know, you have to be sort of 10% braver. That's the goal, because you feel like, well, I'm just one person. What could I do? And that's kind of, it's quite safe to hide behind as well. It's like, well, you don't know, do you? You could do anything, but not if you're scared and you don't do anything. And then you kind of move on to, once you're 10% braver, you move on to being a mistake artist, where you're scared of getting it wrong. What if I get it wrong? What if this happens? What if they, and the answer there is there's no if. You're going to get it wrong. So let's work out what happens when we make a mistake, and how valuable that is to show students, you know what, I've got it wrong and I feel sick and I want to cry. Now watch me navigate this. What an amazing gift that is, to show someone what to do when they don't know what to do. So, but it's the willingness again to be vulnerable. Then at that point, I think that's where you really dig into your why, and you really kind of like, why am I in the room? Because if it's a job and, you know, it's security and you're getting paid, I mean, obviously there are jobs that you get paid a bit more that are easier. If money is the issue, you've made a bad choice. But you get paid instantly, then that's one thing. And I'm not knocking that, because I feel like if you're not ready to stick your head above the parapet, that's okay. It's okay. But own it. Say, I am not brave enough to stand. I'm just going to do, computer says no, system says this, I can't do anything because I am not brave enough, because that's the truth. And when you are ready, it'll be an easier transition. Because when we say, oh, the system, we're the system. If I'm a teacher, I'm the system, and I can make a difference, or I can choose to turn a blind eye. And I know, because I've done both. And then after that why, after you've reconnected with your why, if you go on to do that, then there's a point where you learn to be a resilience ninja. And I think that's where you keep going, even though it feels like the system is trying to crush you. Because any administration that is set up is always set up in the first instance to serve the people doing the delivering. But what happens over time is that the people doing the delivering get more and more constraint from the administration. And what they start to do is they start to turn from serving the children to serving the administration, which means they've got their back on the kids in order to do the job. I get it. And when we knock people who do this, what we've got to remember is they were where we were once. They came into education thinking, I'm going to be different, but they failed to future-proof themselves. And they kind of Forrest Gump their way through it on accidental. And here they are sat in the staff room, sucking lemons and hating everybody, hating kids and stuff. It's not a bad person. That's what you know, we're not original. We're boringly predictable. And so you've got to actually arm yourself against that. And the fourth stage for me is positive disruptor. That's the stage. That's where I live. Positive disruption. And I chose that because disruption was what I had on my school reports all the time, but without the word positive. So I thought I'd just reclaim it and make it something that is better. And so what I do is what those teachers did, is that I positively interrupt people's thoughts. I change people's minds about themselves, about how powerful they are. But it comes down to choice. Choose. You know, being a teacher who delivers the curriculum and ticks the boxes is hard. Being a teacher who is human first and connects is also hard. So choose your hard. You've chosen a ridiculous job in the first place. Choose your hard, because they're both hard. And the thing is, fulfillment is, you know, comes from you persevering through that hard and seeing you've made a difference. It is not easy, but it is very simple.
So I really like the way in which you frame getting to the why. I think lots of us have seen the Simon Sinek video, and everybody robotically goes to why first, and you can't. You've got to connect with the heart before you go to the head, and then the hands will follow. We know that around that. You've learned a lot along the way, and you've built expertise for yourself along the way. You've obviously accumulated that from other people right now, and you're involved in a huge number of projects. So if we take your energy, we take your commitment, we take your wisdom and insight, which is just oozing out of you all over the place. What project are you engaged in right now that has a potential to be a real game changer in creating today's learning for tomorrow's world?
Oh, well, I have something that I've stolen from the corporate world and negotiated free for education, because I'm like, why should they have the best stuff? That journey I described, by the way, it's called the Shero's journey. Sheroes because, you know, the classic hero's journey, Joseph Campbell, the only women in it are like, you know, it's like a pinter play, they're mothers or whores. That's sort of, you know, and as a woman, I quite like a better role model. And also Sheroes as in she rose. It's not a feminist thing. It's like, you know, I've read a lot about guys doing well the whole time, and my heroes like Simon Sinek, like, I mean, they're all, you know, a lot of them are guys, and I think, you know, that's great. But I know how powerful it would be to see someone who is similar to you, who has, even if you know, you resonate with the being poor, or you resonate with the being different, or you resonate with the being alone. I mean, we all know what they are. You know, you might not like with the Black Lives Matter and George Floyd and all that. We're all scared to talk about race because we don't want to get it wrong. And we don't know, I don't know what it's like to be a majority. But if I'm scared and I don't say anything, no one learns. So we all need to say, okay, I might get this wrong and I'm not sure, but can you tell me about the headdress for Muslim women? What are the different names? Help me. Can you spare me 30 minutes of your time? And it's that kind of thing of, are you willing to be curious? Are you ready to be curious? So what I've negotiated when I'm working with corporate, when I'm working with leaders, really, it's not corporate, it's leaders. I use a platform I've worked on, and it's called giant.tv. And on this platform, they have a 5 voices assessment. So I always seek out the best stuff, and then I find the person who wrote it and stalk them until they're my friend. So Steve Cockram, who's like MBTI, just like massive Myers-Briggs guru, he designed 5 voices, which is kind of built on Myers-Briggs and Strength Finder. But Myers-Briggs was written by 2 women without an education. Whoa! Anyway, so he built on this so that people could resonate around relationships, around teams. So it was built largely for teams to be invincible teams in performance. And I looked at it and thought, invincible, that's what schools are. Schools are invincible. Through this lockdown, where's schools been? Right at the front, supporting the kids that need it most, being who they really are, community, family, hubs, invincible. But invincible teams are built using empowered individuals. And empowered individuals know themselves so they can lead themselves and then influence others. They are intentional in their way of being. So the 5 voices assessment helps you work out your kind of leadership intentionality voice order. And we've all got the same 5 voices, but they're in a different order. And then it gives you this whole like Netflix, personal Netflix for the soul of 16 to 4-minute videos all about yourself, like where you're undermining yourself without knowing it, what it's like to be on the other side of you, how you can connect with people who've got a different voice order. It's gold dust, and it's free, and it's for teachers. If I give you the link, will you put it up there? Because
absolutely.
I just want people to have that, because I've negotiated this. The educators can do it, but please, and not just them, their teams, their families. I mean, you take it with your partner as well, get your partner to take it. Very interesting. And suddenly everything makes sense. And I've never seen relationships remain unimproved when people have taken this assessment. It's called the 5 voice assessment, but you have to use my link to get it free. So I'll send that to you so that people can use it.
That'll be awesome, Jazz. You know, sitting here listening to you, I'm really energized by everything that you're sharing, because I often have told my students in the past when I've been in schools, this is my first year, I haven't been in a school in 26 years. I'd get up on a stage, you know, as a deputy principal of a school and give an address. And young men or young women would come up to me afterwards and say, you know, Mr. DePrato, how do you remember all those words? And I would actually say to them, well, I actually don't have a script in front of me. The only time I have a script in front of me is if I have to remember to acknowledge particular individuals, and I never want to miss anyone, because, you know, that's a disaster when you leave anyone out. But what I say to them is that when you speak your truth, words come easy. And what I'm hearing today with you is this really rich lived experience. One that I would imagine neither one of us would want others really to live. But it's the sum of who you are. And what I love about what I'm hearing is that you're saying, this is who I am, and this is who we can be through this. And our strength is through our vulnerability. Our strength is through our capacity to reflect and contemplate, heal ourselves from the residual of our past, as I said earlier, forever remain curious, and ensure that this notion that everyone's home to a life is at the heart of a school. Yeah. And you touched upon a moment ago that what schools are doing right now during this pandemic is what they're really built for, right? And that's people. Because in schools, people matter. And what we've seen here, particularly in Australia, like, you know, in Victoria, our schools were in lockdown pretty much for 6 months. So there's no other schooling system in the world so far that's had the length of time that we've been in remote learning or continuous learning. And what we recognized really quickly was that people matter. So wellness has to be the number one construct, that you got to mix it up, that time now is thrown out the window, and we have to think about synchronous and asynchronous approaches. And the third is that community is king.
Yeah.
And that schools will thrive. So my question to you is this: why is it so bloody hard for schools to place wellness at the center of their delivery model and make it the number one priority, as opposed to league tables, as opposed to, you know, standardized tests and all that? Why is it so hard when we can recognize instinctively when we've got a crisis? What's the first thing we do? We retreat to our humanness, and we focus on the stuff that matters, and that's our heart. Why is it so hard? Why isn't that the construct?
I think on the surface it's because it's laziness. Well, I don't want to say it's easier for an administration to measure standardized test scores. So that feels like it's, you know, an easy thing to do. And don't forget, the administration are trying to serve in the first instance. How can we support you? How can we help you? How can we make sure you've done what you think you've done? It's just that there's been this turning, because when the administration brings in judgment and fear in terms of inspections and grades and attaching honor or, you know, dishonor to the grades that your students get, that's when people start being judged and led by fear. It's like giving a double-decker bus over to a scared 8-year-old child and saying, oh, just drive through Sydney, help yourself, knock yourself out. You know, it's like people are afraid. So in order to combat that fear, people try and just like stay there, do this, we stay this, we just do this all the time. And what I think the biggest thing that schools have realized is exactly what you're saying. Hold on. It always was the most important thing. It always was who we were. We've always been invincible. Why were we living as if we were like pecking crumbs from the ground when we're actually these gorgeous birds of paradise with all this fruit around that we could be eating? And I think that the main thing is that change is hard. Change is hard. Always change is hard. I mean, like when you said you when you speak your truth, you don't, you know, words always come. I always feel like you can't forget your own story. I mean, you can't forget your own story. So your experience, your risks, your ways of thinking are embedded in who you are and the message you give. And I think that's the key thing in making this less hard, because this story now, your 2020 story, the story that we're writing now, the one you've got your pen in your hand now, this story will be the one that you're telling for the rest of your life. Like when you're in an old people's home, you will be rocking back and forth, retelling this story. And if it's not a compelling story, if it's, oh, lockdown was awful and I gave up and hid, no one's going to want to play backgammon with you. You're going to have no friends. So this story is the story you're going to be telling for the rest of your life. And yes, we are all Generation C. You know, you have baby boomers and millennials. We're all Generation C because we were all affected by COVID-19. But that C in Generation C could be generation change, generation creativity, generation compassion, generation complexity, generation courage, generation check yourself before you wreck yourself. We can make that C, we can make it a positive one, but it's our choice. And I feel like asking people to change when they're in, it's like when you're in the tide of this kind of waterfall and people are saying to you, oh, just swim up the other way, you'll have much more. It's like, yes, but I'm in the journey. When there is a kind of cultural earthquake like now, a map is of no use. After the Blitz, my nan used to talk about the Blitz in London. Her friend Ethel used to came up from the underground and everything was leveled, like there's no streets. So a map is useless when there's no streets. But what you need in that case after the Blitz is you need a compass. You need to know which way is north. And that's where we are. There's been a cultural earthquake. What we need now is which way is north? Why are we here? What do we want? What do we want to do with this? Who do we want to be and who do we want to create? And if we are looking at those things as opposed to how do we get 2 marks in geography, then those things require us to start from a different place, to start from being human first, from being authentic, from being consistent, from having high expectation. That's ACE relationships. They're the 3 things that teachers did for me. Authenticity, consistency, high expectation. Doesn't mean letting kids off because they got a poor background. It means having a high expectation, but it means joining the dots. It's about meeting people where they are. That's the difference. The education system as it was pre-COVID was kind of come in, but you've got a student up and be ready and be here. So for me, like not having a blazer, not knowing you weren't supposed to spit in the quad, where I come from, spitting is punctuation. I didn't know you weren't supposed to spit. I didn't know it was unplanned. But the first time I do it, I get hoiked out and told off. I'm like, oh God, I've done something wrong. What are the rules? I'm being punished for my own disadvantage. So I had to student up. And it's like, you know what? To do this belonging, I can just go and like mug an old woman or rob a car and I belong to a gang. You're making it so frigging hard. Why should I bother? So belonging, if you're not going to offer me belonging, why should I even be here? You want loyalty. You're trying to buy my loyalty with a moody £10 note. No, I'm worth more than that. And if you can't see it, there are other people that can. Yes, those people are going to make me, sell my body for money and make me sell drugs, but they care about me. And we're talking about basic human needs here. So the shift of belonging first, it's not about being, I always think well-being was an optional extra before COVID. People talked about spas and cake, having cake. And it's like well-being is creating a life you don't want to regularly escape from. It's not well-being anymore. It's just being. We've all been locked up with our kids for 6 months. We've all got mental health issues now. Being requires us to meet people where they are, to get out of our position and go and stand with them, not in sympathy, but in empathy. Tell me what it's like to be on the other side of me. Tell me what it's like. I want to know from people I'm different to so that I can understand. And for me, there's 3 E's. This is the crux of everything. You empathize, and empathy is radical. It's not some sort of, oh, poor you. It's like literally tell me what it's like. Then you engage people in a conversation because they feel listened to because you heard them in empathy. Then you enroll them into a new way of being. And what the system required before is you enroll straight away. And I'm sorry, but basic human psychology means if you want someone to do something, you don't go in with challenge first, you go in with support. You've got to calibrate support and challenge, but you go in with support first. You empathize, then you engage in a conversation, which isn't me saying you're wrong, do it my way, you'll be fine. It's a conversation. Then you move in for the kill and you enroll them into a new way of thinking. They're the 3 E's. And you know where I learned that from? Jason the pimp. Drug dealers, county lines, pimps, they know how to make people feel like they belong. Their livelihood depends on it. I think educators could learn a lot from that aspect of being criminal.
Hey, Jazz.
Empathy, engage, enroll.
Hey, Jazz, last question. So much in there, and that so much in that message in there, which is around change, and so much about what we need to do to change and to evolve. Last question: what does the world need now?
Human revolution. We've had an industrial one, we've had a technological one, we've had a digital one. We need a human revolution where being human is what is valued. And the people who are sought upon and looked for and valued the most are the people who can be agile and can reframe and can reflect and refocus. That's what we need. We need a human revolution. And here's the good news. That happens when each one of us makes a personal decision. We don't have to wait for the governments to vote it in. We don't have to wait for some Elon Musk to invent something. We can do it ourselves today by being intentional.
Jazz Ampaw Farr, you are a remarkable human being. The RELEARN Festival has been so lucky to have your voice and your advocacy and your presence and your story as part of it. It's been a privilege for Adriano and I to have a wee chat with you today. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Oh, can I just say, remarkable by choice, not by accident. Do the work. It's not an accident. It's not an accident.
Thank you very much, Jazz. It's just been awesome listening to you. Thank you for sharing your 3 E's, sharing all those C's. And for me, there's another C, and that is around consciousness, deep consciousness of self, place, and the other. And I love when we get these opportunities, Phil, to meet remarkable humans who, irrespective of personal circumstance and adversity, continue to choose courage over comfort, who continue to forever remain curious and keep giving themselves permission to triumph. So, Jazz, thank you very much. This has just been life-giving, and we wish you all the very best going forward. And we hope when you're in Australia next, we can shout you a beautiful dinner. In Melbourne, of course, because it's such a glorious city.
We'll do both.
We'll do both.
Thanks, Jazz.
Okay.
Thank you.
The Game Changers podcast is produced by Oliver Cummins for Orbital Productions. It's powered by aschoolfortomorrow.com and circle.education. It's available on Apple Podcasts, on SoundCloud, on Spotify, and on Google. If you like what you hear, tell your friends, subscribe, like, you know what to do. Let's go.